Okay, we are left only with just the last 3 chapters, 23, 24, and 25. And these 3 are very important chapters because they will tell you about a number of things. The first thing that we all would understand is why the novel is called Things Fall Apart. Tell me, if you can, what are the things that are falling apart? There are a number of things which are falling apart. Can you name them?
Sir, their unity.
Speak a bit louder so that everybody can hear you.
Their unity.
Unity, yes.
The unity of Igbo tribe.
Yes, absolutely right, Sneha. Unity of the tribal people, that is falling apart. Then, second point.
Their culture, religion.
Their culture, yes. Their tradition, their religion, yes. Absolutely right. And anything else of the Europeans? Is anything falling apart of the Europeans? No. Apparently, it seems only the Igbo community is losing its ground. But if you delve deeper, you understand that because of the repressive, suppressive techniques that the British employed in controlling the Igbo people, they are also sowing their own seeds of destruction. They will not really rule over Nigeria for a long time. So, Achebe, while naming the novel as Things Fall Apart, is not just talking about the Nigerian things which are falling apart, but at the same time, he is suggesting that the colonialists, these colonists will also, the colonizers will also very soon fall apart because their empire is based on suppression, repression, and torture and violence. On a short-term basis, true, they succeeded. And apart from this, what is falling apart? Okonko is falling apart. That great warrior Okonko is falling apart. The kind of fame, reputation that he achieved because of his wrestling skills, because of his warlike heroics, along with all other things, right? Because of his pride, because of his inability to adapt, because of his rigidity, right? And because of his peculiar kind of a mental setup that he should not look like a female, he should not do anything like a woman, right? So Okonko is also falling apart. And in the last chapter, that is chapter 22 of Things Fall Apart, we saw, if you remember, how the tribals, if they can unite, how they can really demolish, destroy the church property. You know, because one of their Ejkubu was unmasked and killed. So they took revenge. So on one hand, Achebe was showing how the unity of these people could really be a force. And then what the colonizers always did. They also did the same thing here. In this particular case, they did not accept the destruction of their church, remaining passive. So in the next chapter, in chapter 23 of Things Fall Apart, we would see that they, under one pretext or the other, would try to settle scores. চাপ বসে থাকবে না তারা, তারা রাজ্য চালাতে এসেছে, তারা শাসন করতে এসেছে, তারা একদিকে মানবিকতার সুযোগ নেবে, শিক্ষার সুযোগ নেবে, because they are technologically advanced, because they are educationally advanced, they will obviously dangle all these lollipops to these people. And at the same time, whenever they would be challenged, they would use force, they would use their violence, their firearms to repress them, torture them, punish them, and make them feel panicky and scared. I'm going to now share my screen with you and going to tell you, in fact, to show you in the text, how in the next chapter, chapter 23, Chapter 23, for the first time in many years, Okonko had a feeling that was akin to happiness. Yes, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So the times which had altered so unaccountably during his exile seemed to be coming round again. It was actually the appearance. He thought that he was reclaiming his lost honor. Right? He had spoken violently to his clansmen when they had met in the marketplace to decide on their action. And they had listened to him with respect. It was like the good old days again, when a warrior was a warrior. Although they had not agreed to kill the missionary or drive away the Christians, they had agreed to do something substantial. So Okonko was taken to believe that yes, perhaps once again he would assume his respect and honor, and he would do something for the society. For 2 days after the destruction of the church, nothing happened. And then, initially what happens is that they used to carry with them their firearms or their machete. But after 2 days, when nothing happened, they took it for granted that, well, the British would not really retaliate. And then the district commissioner returned. And what happened? 3 days later, the district commissioner sent his sweet-tongued messenger to the leaders of Umuafia, asking them to meet him in his headquarters. Interestingly, look at this. This is the way that the British functioned. They always took advantage of the simplicity, of the trustworthiness of the people they wanted to colonize. And as they were very simple, what happened? 6 of the greatest leaders, including Okonko, they went to meet the district commissioner in his court. Okonko warned them to remain fully armed. Yes, and the 6 men went to the district commissioner, but then they were taken unawares, right? And suddenly, before they could do anything, what happened? Their messengers, the commissioner's armed forces, they came and they imprisoned them. Mark that. They sat together with the men of Umuofia, and Ogufi Ekbume began to tell the story of how Enoch murdered an Egbukfu. Actually, these are all, the pretext. The commissioner was not interested at all to listen to the story. So what happened? It happened so quickly that the 6 men did not see it coming. There was only a brief scuffle, too brief even to allow the drawing of a sheathed machete. Mark that. These people, so simple by nature, that they had brought the machete with them, but they once again sheathed it. See, the sheathed machete. The 6 men were handcuffed and led into the guard room. So they were all taken into captivity. And they were simply threatened that they must pay a heavy compensation for what they did. Right? And they lashed them, they flogged them, they insulted them. And just imagine, it was not a simple insult of an ordinary man. The greatest of the Igbo men, deceptive manner, they were taken into captivity and then flogged. They were not allowed to eat anything, and they were not given anything to drink. Okay, Mark and Okonkwo was choked with hate. This is not really allowing a man to behave like a man. This is absolute deception and treachery. You call them for a meeting and then you arrest them. You do not listen to them. You do not argue. You simply force them. And then first they were asked to pay a fine of 200 cowries. And then the messengers added another 50, right? And the whole of the village, they came to know that their greatest leaders were taken into captivity. Everybody was afraid. Earlier, the British had already killed some neighboring villagers, so that they were very, very scared. They thought perhaps they would lose their 6 leaders. Umuofia was like a startled animal with ears erect, sniffing the silent, ominous air and not knowing which way to run. It was something they never experienced in their life. They believed that a man fights a man face to face. It was such a strategy, underhand means, that they never in fact practiced it, they never believed in it, they never imagined for that. And what happened? The whole of the village just surrendered. They paid 250 cowries to appease the white men. Right? Mark that. On the morning after the village criers appeased the men of Umuofia, met in the marketplace and decided to collect without delay 250 bags of cowries to appease the white man. They did not know that 50 bags would go to the court messengers. Try to understand. So you have already a kind of a bribe, right? So along with money comes the greed. So the white man, the district commissioner, asked for 200 and the messengers added 50 for their own share. So you understand, given the kind of respect, self-esteem that Okonkwo had, what would happen after this kind of experience? In chapter 24, we learn that all these 6 great men of the Igbo community, they were set free, right? And the district commissioner spoke to them again about the great queen and about peace and good government. Mark that. This is the irony. What they call good government and peace is simply subjugation. চুপচাপ আমরা যা বলি তাই করো, তাহলে শান্তিতে থাকবে। আমাদের বিরুদ্ধে কিছু করতে এসো না, তাহলে তোমাদের গুলি করে দেবো। Right. But the 6 men were not in a condition to listen to them. They were insulted. They could not digest. They did not know how to face their own community. Right. And when they were released, the men wore such heavy and fearsome looks that the women and children did not say no or welcome to them. Right. So it was a very different kind of a situation. Ejinma had prepared some food for her father. He ate absent-mindedly because he didn't really feel any appetite. They noticed the long stripes on Okonko's back, where the warder's whip had cut into his flesh. So they flogged. Chabuk মেরেছে তারা ওকঙ্কর খালি পিঠে, মেরেছে বাকি 5 জনকে, অপমান করেছে, খেতে দেয়নি, জোর করে তাদের বাধ্য করেছে সবকিছুকে মেনে নিতে। ওকঙ্কো could not sleep. এর আগে তোমাদের মনে আছে যখন তার ফস্টার সানকে মেরেছিল ওকঙ্কো, তখন ও রাত্রি ঘুমোতে পারেনি। Right, that was his conscience bite. Now it was absolute ignominy. ট্রাইবাল কালচারে এই রকমের একজন নেতা যাকে সারা গ্রাম শ্রদ্ধা করত, সেই লোকটার ইজ্জতটুকু কেড়ে নিয়েছে এই ব্রিটিশরা। And naturally he swore vengeance, একটাই উপায়, so that he can get back somewhat of his honor, that is to take revenge. But the problem is that many people of his community were so scared of the white men that they would not really easily accept his strategy of taking revenge. And then there was a speaker among them called Egongwon. You must remember the name, the coward Egongwon. He knows how to speak very convincingly, and Okonko was afraid that he would speak in such a manner that all the people who would gather in the meeting called for their next action would really be convinced, and naturally there would be no revenge taken. But Okonko has already taken a decision. If the society is not going to be with him, তারা যদি তার সঙ্গ না দেয়, তারা যদি বলে না ব্রিটিশদের বিরুদ্ধে আমরা কোনো হাতিয়ার তুলব না, তাহলে ওকঙ্কো would take it as a personal revenge. সুতরাং আমরা জানি that in the tribal culture, whenever a decision has been taken, it is taken in a meeting together. So a meeting was convened, and Okonko, his friend Obirika, and others, they all started assembling at that place, open field. And then there was a discussion started. Now mark, here we have one of the speaker, Okika. He started speaking. All our gods are weeping. Idemili is weeping. Ogwukfu is weeping. Agbala is weeping. Right? They could not really digest the kind of treatment that were given by the strangers. But then there is one catch. Amra jani, এতদিনে খ্রিশ্চানদের সঙ্গে বেশ কয়েকজন ইগমো মানুষও যুক্ত হয়েছে। So to take arms against the strange people, the Christians, would also to take arms against their own fellow men. কিন্তু কি করা যাবে? Mark, the time demanded that if some of them had joined them, let them also feel the consequences. If we fight the stranger, we shall hit our brothers and perhaps shed the blood of a clansman, but we must do it. So gradually, they were even getting ready to take arms, if needed, against their own fellow brethren. We must root out this evil. And if our brothers take the side of evil, we must root them out too. We must do it now. Look at the urgency now. So two important changes were made. Earlier, they decided not to take arms against their own people. Now the situation demanded that if the need is, they have to even kill their own clansmen who had joined the Christians. We must bail this water now, and that is only ankle deep. But before anything else could have been decided, suddenly what happened? 5 of the court messengers arrived there. And given their kind of language, they started also speaking in a disrespectful tone. The white man whose power you know too well has ordered this meeting to stop. And this is too much for Okonko. What happened? Okonko murdered one of the messengers. Before anybody could do anything, before anybody could stop him, before the messengers could really prevent this, Okonko's machete descended twice, and the man's head lay beside his uniform body. It was not just a revolt against one of the messengers, it was obviously a direct challenge of the British, the colonizers. So what happened? The whole of the community, in fact, became extremely panicky. The meeting suddenly stopped. And Okonko could find that the whole of Umuofia had deserted him. He knew that now nobody would join with him. He knew that it is now left to him to fight out his own battle. So, and also he heard voices asking, why did he do it? So he was impulsive, he was violent, and he murdered one of the messengers. This was not supported by the rest of the society. The tragedy is that what he wanted was actually to retain the culture, the tradition, the religion, the belief of the Igbo culture. And the tragedy, or you may call it irony, that he wanted to preserve the Igbo community, and the Igbo community deserted him. And the last chapter is chapter 25. We don't know really what happened after that. But then suddenly we know that the commissioner became very angry, and he, along with some of the men with firearms, obviously, they came to Okonko's compound, and they demanded that Okonko be produced immediately before him. Obirika was there, and they threatened that if they delay, then all of them would be shot dead. Right. But Obirika said, well, if you want to go to Okonko, well, I can lead you there. And mark, they came to the tree from which Okonko's body was dangling. So what happened? Okonko committed suicide. Okonko killed himself, unable to accept the ignominy, unable to accept the desertion by his own fellow men. Okonko, ironically and most tragically, did what in his entire life he tried to avoid: to look like a woman. We know that the Igbo people, they considered suicide as feminine, as not masculine. But what happened? He was so frustrated, he was so desperate that he could not really find out any other option. perhaps this was also his way of revolting against the British as well as the Igbo community, which did not really behave as he expected it to behave. The problem now would be for the Igbo people, because if any one of them commits suicide, well, they don't touch their body. They don't touch that body. They don't bury it. So Obirika said, well, we want the help of your people. And the district commissioner immediately, finding that Okomko has committed suicide, seems to have toned down a bit. And here it is explained to him, it is an abomination for a man to take his own life. It is an offense against the earth. A man who commits it will not be buried by his clansmen because his body is considered to be evil. And now we cannot bury him. So we are going to pay for you if you help us. And then, this is a very important moment. We know that Obirika is a very pragmatic, wise man. But here perhaps is one of the moments when Obirika spoke out very clearly against the British. Obirika, who had been gazing steadily at his friend's dangling body, suddenly turned to the district commissioner and said ferociously, mark that word, this is Achebe telling us what a simple tribal could do. He could express his frustration. He could express his disapproval. That man was one of the greatest men in Umuofia. You drove him to kill himself. And now he will be buried like a dog. Perhaps this is the highest tribute that could have been paid to Okomko by none other than a very wise and trusted friend, Obirika. But his voice was hushed, shut up, shouted one of the messengers. And then Mark suddenly, towards the last 2 pages or so, there's an interesting shift in the narrative style. Look at this. Now, district commissioner thought that he had already plenty of experience in Africa, and he already understood their nature, their customs, their religion and all. And mark it here, Achebe ironically let the district commissioner give his own perspective. So the district commissioner decided that he must never attend to such undignified details as cutting a hangman from the tree. Mark that. This he considered to be below his dignity. Such attention would give the natives a poor opinion of him. Mark that. He is talking about opinion. So I would do what I would like to do, but I would not really come to help you out. In the book which he planned to write, he would stress that point. So he decided that he would write a book about his experience. The story of this man who had killed a messenger and hanged himself would make interesting reading. Mark now. This is what happened to Okomko. This is the second tragedy. Now the British district commissioner would write about Okomko. And we can very well understand in what light he would present Okomko. To him, Okomko is an interesting study. One could almost write a whole chapter on him. Mark that. Initially, he thought that he would write about Okomko, and Okomko, given the kind of man that Okomko was, well, he must write a whole chapter so that he could properly bring out everything about Okonkwo. But within a second, he said, perhaps not a whole chapter, but a reasonable paragraph from a chapter. Now, the value of Okonkwo is substantially reduced. And now it is just a paragraph. There was so much else to include, and one must be firm in cutting out details. Okonkwo, after all, to the British District Commissioner, is not so great that he could be given a whole chapter. Therefore, he had already chosen the title of the book. And what another irony, he has decided what title he would give to this book. And after much thought, the title is The Pacification of the Primitive Tribes of the Lower Niger. I would like you to note two words, pacification and primitive. Primitive, uncivilized. Naturally, Achebe is asking us to look at that word primitive used by the British. Obviously, the undercutting is, who is the real primitive? Are the Igbo people really primitive? Yes, in the eyes of the British, they are primitive. But the way the British had suppressed and repressed all these simple people, the way they had killed so many people just because they tried to say something about their own way, adopt their own way of life, naturally, we must ask ourselves the question, who is really a primitive, uncivilized? And then comes the word pacification. Where is the pacification? Is it the way that you try to pacify? Pacify মানে কি? শান্ত করা। এখানে শান্ত করার চেষ্টা কোথায়? এখানে তো জোর করে দমন করা, বশে আনা, চাবুক মারা, হত্যা করা। Where is pacification? But then in the jargon, in the language of the British, this is the pacification. So we have to understand a number of very important things here. What actually Achebe is doing, therefore, towards the end of the novel is that on one hand, he is asking us to look at Okonkwo, asking us to understand the drawbacks, the shortcomings of the simple Nigerian tribal culture. And at the same time, asking us also to rationalize Okonkwo's defects, his pride, his rigidity, his lack of adaptability. And on the other hand, certain greater things, better things of the British, which I discussed earlier also, about their methodical way of functioning, their sense of governance, their introduction of trade, education, and a more humanistic religion. But side by side, their repression, their suppression, their violence, their inhumanity, their power hunger. All these are beautifully presented. And in the entire novel, we are shown at different levels, different kind of language used. In the last chapter, you would find some over sophisticated words that are used. And obviously the perspective is the perspective of the British. So instead of using the simple language of the Igbo people in the last chapter, especially in the language of the district commissioner, we find some artificial, highly sophisticated use of language. In the novel also, we are shown at different levels, different times, different nuances and subtleties of the Igbo culture, how the drum used to be played, how the drum played an important role, their belief in a number of deities. So they don't believe in only one God. They have many gods and goddesses. And overall, you would find that when Achebe has taken the title from W.B. Yeats as Things Fall Apart, and purposely not declaring exactly what things he means thereby, we have to understand that he is purposely keeping it open for us to decide, to reflect and think what could be these things. So as we initially today discussed that the things included not just the different aspects of Igbo life, but also Okonko and also the British Empire, which at that time was perhaps expanding. But the way they were expanding, well, the seeds of destruction were also sowed there. So we knew, we understand that yes, it's not going to last forever. And people will gradually understand the hypocrisy. Okay? So I end there. I have discussed the entire novel and I hope you have understood. In case you have any problem, you can always write in the WhatsApp. So that, thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.